Every single day we're just swimming in this ocean of information. We've got news alerts, social media feeds, arguments with friends. It's constant. But have you ever stopped to think about how much of that is actually designed not to inform you, but to deceive you? And what happens when that deception gets automated? Well, let's get into it.
Come on, we've all been there, right? You're in a conversation and suddenly it takes this bizarre turn, and you find yourself defending a point you never even made. Or maybe you agree to something and it's only later that you realize you were kinda nudged into it. This isn't just bad luck. A lot of the time, it's the result of some carefully crafted but totally flawed arguments and psychological games.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to go on a little 4-part journey. First, we'll break down the building blocks of just plain bad arguments. Then, we'll see how those flawed arguments can be turned into weapons of manipulation. After that, we're going to jump into the modern day and see how this ancient art is getting supercharged by AI. And finally, the most important part, we'll talk about our best defense. So let's start at square one. See, before you even get to deliberate manipulation, you often just have simple, honest-to-goodness errors in reasoning. And understanding these basic flaws, that's the first step to becoming totally immune to them. The big concept we need to grab onto here is the logical fallacy. Now, a fallacy isn't just about getting a fact wrong. No, it's a mistake in the actual structure of the argument itself. Think of it like a crack in the foundation of a house. And here's the key. It can be a totally unintentional slip-up, something we all do, or it can be a tool used on purpose to mislead. Learning to spot these is like having a superpower in any conversation. All right, let's look at one of the absolute most common fallacies you're ever going to run into. It's called the straw man. And I promise you, once you learn what it is, you are going to see it everywhere. So here's the classic setup. Person one makes a pretty specific point, right? Legalize marijuana. But notice how person two completely ignores that. Instead, they build this distorted, ridiculous version of the argument, the straw man, about kids taking hard drugs. This is so effective because it completely hijacks the debate. It's no longer about a reasonable policy discussion. Suddenly, person one is forced to defend this shocking, absurd accusation. It's way, way easier to attack the straw man than the real argument.
Okay, so if a straw man twists the argument, a red herring just abandons it completely. This is the ultimate art of distraction.
Ah, a classic move, especially in politics. Instead of answering a really tough question about, say, corruption, the speaker just throws something else on the table. Something unrelated but really important sounding, like unemployment. This red herring works because our attention is limited. They throw out this shiny new topic for us to chase, and the hope is that we get so wrapped up in the new thing, we completely forget about the original, uncomfortable question. So we've seen how arguments can be flawed, either by accident or on purpose. Now we're going to focus on that on purpose part. This is where we step away from simple logical mistakes and enter the much darker world of deliberate psychological manipulation. Okay, so this is really, really important. What is the difference between these two? It all comes down to one word: intent. A logical fallacy is about the argument. Manipulation is about the person's goal. You can accidentally use a bad argument. We all do it. But you cannot accidentally manipulate someone. Manipulation, by its very nature, is purposeful. It's a hidden influence, and it's always designed to give the manipulator a one-sided win. Researchers have actually broken down manipulation into 5 key features. It all starts with psychological influence. But the attitude is what's really chilling. It's seeing other people not as human beings, but as objects, as tools to get what you want. And that goal is always a one-sided advantage. It's meant to benefit the manipulator, usually at your expense. Of course, the whole thing has to be hidden, right? It wouldn't work if you knew what was happening. And the method? It's all about finding and exploiting a person's weaknesses, their fears, their guilt, their hopes, and using those as levers to control them. And to pull all this off, manipulators have a whole toolkit of nasty techniques. They might use straight-up denial, just refusing to admit they did something, or rationalization, coming up with these elaborate excuses for why their bad behavior was actually okay. They use deception, for sure, but also much more subtle stuff, like making you feel guilty or ashamed so you feel responsible for their feelings. It's a really destructive game. Now, for centuries, all these human flaws, our messy reasoning and our ability to manipulate, they were limited by human scale. One person can only trick so many people. But that's all changing. We are now literally building our own flawed logic directly into our machines. creating systems that can supercharge this art of deception on a massive scale. And to get a sense of just how big this is, just look at this number. Almost half of all US jobs could be automated in the next couple of decades. And we're not just talking about robots on an assembly line. This is AI getting into every corner of our lives, making decisions that affect our jobs, our social lives, everything. So here's the catch. We tend to think of computers as being perfectly logical, totally objective. But they're not at all. AI systems are built by humans. They learn from data created by humans. And that means they can inherit all of our biases, our prejudices, and our own flawed ways of thinking. And look, this isn't some far-off theory. These are real-world examples. An AI system used in American courts was proven to be biased against Black defendants. Amazon had to literally scrap a hiring AI because it taught itself to be sexist against women. Even something as simple as image recognition can be biased, with systems trained on Western images failing to recognize people and objects from other cultures. This is flawed logic, but it's been automated and scaled up to affect millions of lives. And what makes this even more dangerous is something called the black box problem. Basically, many advanced AIs are so complicated that even the people who made them can't fully explain their decision-making process. We see the data that goes in, and we see the answer that comes out, but the why in the middle is a total mystery. So when a black box AI denies you a loan or a job, how can you possibly appeal a decision that no one understands? So it all comes down to this. We are building these incredibly powerful, often mysterious systems that are making life-altering decisions. And that power is being concentrated in the hands of a very small number of companies and developers. This quote from a European Parliament report says it perfectly. This reality has to be front and center in any conversation we have about the ethics and laws for AI. Okay, I know, that picture can seem a little grim. We've got flawed human arguments being amplified by biased, mysterious machines. But it is not hopeless. This isn't about being anti-technology, it's about being pro-human. Our greatest defense is the one thing the machines don't have: real, genuine critical thinking. And this, right here, is the core message. Technology might be the weapon, but the real battlefield is our own mind. An algorithm can't force you to believe something. A logical fallacy is completely powerless if you see it for what it is. Your awareness is your shield. So what can you actually do? Well, first, just recognize the tactics. The moment you can name a strawman fallacy in a debate, its power just evaporates. Second, always question the source and their motive. Who is this person or this AI, and what do they want? Third, demand transparency. We should all support policies for explainable AI so we're not being governed by black boxes. And last but not least, trust your gut. If an interaction feels manipulative or just off, it probably is. So we'll leave you with this one final thought. As artificial intelligence gets better and better at generating persuasive, personalized, and just relentless arguments, the simple act of thinking for yourself becomes more important and, honestly, more challenging than ever before. Defending that independence, that is the critical task for all of us.